Poppy. Poppy, look at the camera, please. Once. Here we are, Portland Castle. Right, it's been raining a little bit today. Oh, last night anyway. You haven't got your seatbelt on.
I know, because I didn't know we were moving, because I thought we don't know where we're going yet, because I haven't
I see.
told Mrs. Satnag.
Go on then, program Mrs. Satnag.
It's a four
Oh,
square.
right, okay. So it's, that's right, okay. So that's recommendations come off Foursquare then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, she says we'll get there at 9:37.
Please drive to highlighted route.
I think it's back the way we went to Weymouth yesterday. Oh, shall I put us on car?
Yes,
We're
please.
on motorhome now.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were on car and we should
Get the right vehicle one of these days.
car.
You know what we need, don't you?
What do we need?
And Mrs. Satnag for the car.
Please drive to highlighted route.
Oh dear. Now I've booked tickets for 10 o'clock Portland Castle. That's the main thing we want to go to today.
Yeah. Okay.
Built by Henry VIII.
Yep. That was part of his chain of forts, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
So is it one like Deal? So
Yeah, it was built towards the end because he died 1547.
Yeah.
And this was built about 1541, something like that.
Right.
So I've got a little bit of the history of the castle, but obviously there'll be a lot of things there. But surprisingly enough, Portland Castle is made of Portland stone.
Yeah.
And one of the governors there was Sir Walter Raleigh.
Yeah. Nice little job.
Yeah.
Job for the boys.
Continue on B3390.
Sea Life Centre on your right.
It's definitely not as sunny as it was yesterday.
No, it's quite foggy.
View of the harbour, all the boats.
Lots
Oh,
of
look at that
boats.
one. Wow.
Wow.
That is
Tiny
huge.
little ones next to it.
Yeah. That's a lot of boats. It's Chesil
At
Beach.
the roundabout, take the second exit to Portland Road.
The Chesil Beach roundabout.
Yep.
Not going to see much today, are we?
That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, not this morning anyway. We'll catch something on the way back.
It's the Isle and Royal Manor of Portland.
Got the car park to ourselves. God, it's misty today. Sun's trying to break through. All right, Poppy, we're coming. We're just going to have a wander over here, see what's out here then. Now, that's the castle from the outside. How much of this you can see.
It's a shame it's so foggy today.
Yeah, typical, isn't it? I mean, these castles that Henry built were like little flat forts, weren't they? They weren't very tall.
No.
There's obviously a nice little handy harbour for it. Yeah. What do you reckon, Pops? Hey? Yeah?
Hey, come on. You're making another dog bark over there.
No, it's an echo.
It's an echo, is it?
Yeah. Or is it?
No, it is an echo, isn't it?
Yeah. Poppy, leave that. That's a mussel.
Yeah,
or
don't eat
something.
that.
You don't want that. Well, you probably do. Yeah, very interesting. So we think that object out there is one of the D-Day caissons, but I can't really tell at the moment.
No, I think that's what it is.
Go on,
Definitely.
you found out something about the castle then?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was built by Henry VIII. We said that, didn't
Yeah.
we? Between 1539 and 1541.
Yeah.
It formed part of the King's device programme. I thought I was going to say defence, but it's device programme. Protect against invasion from France and the Holy Roman Empire, and defended the Portland Road's anchorage. It's a fan-shaped castle, it says.
Okay.
Built from Portland stone with a curved central tower and a gun battery,
Okay.
flanked by 2 Anglia wings. Apparently there's a sister castle, which I think I noticed as we're coming in,
Yeah.
called Sandsfoot on the other side.
Which we can't see.
No. During the Civil War, Portland was taken by the royalist supporters of King Charles I and then survived 2 sieges before finally surrendering to Parliament in 1646.
Okay, it looks in good condition for that though.
It does, doesn't it?
Well, as usual, we're early. Bit of advertising for English heritage here. But, I mean, we must have done a few of these. 84 ecclesiastical sites, 64 castles, 58 prehistoric sites, 53 Roman sites, 23 historic gardens, 47 London statues,
Gosh.
and 47 halls, houses and domestic dwellings, and 1 Cold War bunker.
27 forts.
27 forts, and this is one of the forts, isn't it?
Yeah,
Presumably,
yeah.
Wow,
I wonder how many puppies done.
so that's what our money pays for. Do my bit of B-roll here. Yeah, yeah. That's what you're supposed to do, isn't it? You're supposed to zoom in on the flowers. I've been a bit manky, that one. Right, we've got our face nappies on, as someone nicely put them.
It. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to Portland Castle. Although it's called a castle, it was never constructed as a noble residence. It's actually a gun fort. Built between 1539 and 1540 during the reign of King Henry VIII, it was one of a chain of coastal defence fortifications. For a defensive structure, the castle may seem surprisingly small, but it was solidly built, well equipped, and staffed by military men for over 400 years.
Oh.
On our tour, we'll be moving through the centuries, from Tudor times to World War II, to explore the castle, the captain's house, where you picked up your audio guide, and the rest of the complex. Follow this path into the castle. Just a word of warning though, the castle's historic floors are often uneven, and you may find steps in some unexpected places. So please do take care. Enjoy your visit.
To select an audio clip, buttons function as options A, B and C.
Or alternatively, you could get in on your phone. Mapmyvisit.com. Okay. Right, go on then, in you go.
You go first,
The
Mr.
zigzag
Newton.
entrance to the castle might have struck you as unusual, but it was deliberately designed this way to prevent gunshot from injuring the garrison inside and to confuse an enemy attempting to force entry. There's another important defensive element in this room, the walls. They're 12 feet, or about 4 meters thick, built to withstand being struck by cannonballs. Originally, many of the windows were narrower, and some were known as cross loops, from which soldiers could fire their longbows and guns. But they were enlarged in the 19th century.
Wow.
We'll see some unaltered cross loops later. For now, imagine this room quite dim, even in daytime. This room is the Garrison Hall. The entire ground floor of the castle was a working area, as we'll see in the next few rooms. Here, though, the garrison ate, played games, relaxed, and waited, warmed by the fireplace in the corner. Life at Portland Castle involved long periods of routine duties and occasional action. In times of peace, the garrison was only large enough to look after the guns, with up to 15 men, including a captain and master gunner. When a threat arose, more men and supplies were brought in, up to 100 gunners, volunteers, and additional soldiers. But when all was quiet, the castle, and other English coastal forts like it, was often neglected. Before you leave this room, take a look at the ornate wooden post. As part of the original 16th century design, it helped support the upper floor. Behind it is a timber and plaster partition which separated the garrison hall from smaller back rooms.
When you are ready, go into the right-hand room and press the green button on your player. The doorway isn't very high, so be sure to mind your head.
Can you imagine the rich scent of meat and barley stew boiling in a pot over the roaring, crackling fire? Take a look around the castle kitchen. It's been furnished according to what we think it would have been like in Tudor times. The replica objects, like the crockery, are modern, but were made from authentic materials and designs. The kitchen was originally divided into 3 separate spaces by wood and plaster walls. If you look at the floor to the right of the stairs, the cobbled area was once a cellar for storing wine and beer. It was filled in long ago. Towards the windows was the pantry. The actual cooking part was near the large fireplace. Here, from time to time, joints of meat were roasted on rotating spits, especially mutton, a local speciality. However, the garrison mostly ate a thick soup called pottage, along with fish, cheese, and bread. The small brick-lined bread oven on the left side of the fireplace dates from the 19th century and may have replaced an earlier one. The men probably got fruit and vegetables from a garden outside, which we'll visit later. One of the soldiers cooked for the others, and probably for the captain as well, although the captain could afford food and drink of a much higher standard. Even though the kitchen was the warmest room in the fort, the soldiers didn't eat here. They brought their food back to the garrison hall. The windows here were originally cross loops, but were enlarged in the 19th century, when the castle became a private residence. But for centuries before that, even the kitchen and pantry were designed with defense in mind. When you're ready, go up the steps and through the doorway onto the outside deck. It can be slippery when it's wet, so please take care. Imagine a battle scene. While enemy ships near Portland Castle, men crowd this gun floor, aiming their great guns through the 5 arched openings in the walls. 4 or 5 gunners work each gun, ramming powder and wadding inside, loading the round shot or cannonballs. Depending on the size of the gun, these cannonballs might weigh up to 42 pounds or 19 kilograms. And then the gun floor is thick with smells, the noxious stench of gunpowder smoke and sweating bodies. And each time a gun is fired, its report, or sound, is ear-splittingly loud. A jet aeroplane taking off only registers 145 decibels. And there are 5 cannon on this gun floor, firing every minute and recoiling violently. So just imagine the noise. Now, imagine all this exploding gunpowder, bustle, shouting, and strong smells in semi-darkness. Originally, the gun floor was an enclosed area. Look above the doorway where you came outside. On the wall next to the window is a groove where there was once a watertight seal between this area and an upper floor. This upper floor was made from heavy timber and covered in lead sheet. It held a second tier of guns, but was removed in the 18th century. We'll see the remains of the upper gun floor later. Because of all the gunpowder, fires were forbidden in here. Otherwise, a single spark could blow up the entire castle. The gunners and soldiers used lanterns and light coming through the gun embrasures to see what they could, but mostly they worked in hazy conditions. Although the garrison was prepared for battle, they only faced serious action once, during the English Civil War. You'll hear more about it later on. Note that in 1716, there were a series of small rooms formed by light partitions against the back wall of the lower gun room. These were the gunners' sleeping quarters. Clearly, they date back into the 17th century, if not earlier. So the gunners were quite literally sleeping next to their guns. If you follow the floor around, past the last gun, on your right, you'll see a narrow doorway. Behind is a privy, or toilet, dating back to Tudor times. Something of a luxury back then. It emptied directly into the harbour. Walk past it and go back inside the fort, down the stairs and into the next room. The button displayed in this text panel is decorated with 3 cannonballs above 3 cannon. It adorned a uniform of the Royal Regiment of Artillery, known as the Gunners, and was found here at Portland Castle in the 1950s. In this room, you can see the cross-loop windows as they were originally built. The small openings were designed to help stop cannonballs and bullets hitting soldiers inside the castle. The rounded ends were where soldiers rested the barrels of their guns as they shot. In reality, though, weapons fired through loop windows were only capable of protecting the garrison against minor attacks. The small cross loops also meant that, like in the other rooms we visited, this room was poorly lit. We don't really know what this particular room was used for, possibly storage or even for sleeping. Recently, it's been called the Armoury, possibly because it was used for storing gunpowder in the 19th century and weapons during the First World War. Before you leave this room, you might want to try on a replica of a soldier's uniform. And now that you've visited one of the gun floors, you can use the interactive game to try your hand at loading and firing a cannon yourself.
Yeah, Pops, give that a go then.
When you're ready to move on, press the green button for directions to the next room.
No, it is here. This is correct. It's called the Mannings.
Right.
Theory, the captain oversaw the castle, but in practice, he often didn't spend much time here. He probably had several of these postings and received a stipend from each, part of which was used to pay for a deputy or a junior officer. This assistant took his share before paying the soldiers, whose wages were quite small and often fell into arrears. As you can see, the furniture in this room gives it a Victorian feel. It hints at another important part of the fort's history, the years it was a private home. That story begins outside, so look out of any of the windows at the captain's house where you picked up your orders. The house was probably built in the 17th century and became known as the Master Gunner's House. It once contained a brew house, stables, and a sutler, an independent merchant who sold items not included in the garrison's basic provisions. In 1816, part of the house was rented to the Reverend John Manning, rector of Portland. He began converting it into his residence. In 2 episodes in 1839 and 1858, his son, Captain Charles Manning, extended the building to its present size. He added the protruding oriel window and the mock battlements along the roof. He also made numerous changes to the castle, constructing a porch above the door you used to enter and replacing many of the cross-loop windows with rectangular ones. The interior walls were plastered and painted, the floors carpeted. Proper toilets were installed. The castle was decorated with beautiful furniture and paintings, as well as the captain's personal collections that included weapons and fossils. After Captain Manning died in 1869, senior officers serving in the nearby Verne Citadel, a new fortification on the heights above the castle, lived in the house. During the First World War, the castle was used as an ordnance store. During the Second World War, the castle accommodated soldiers, and may have been used as offices for both British and American units in the build-up to D-Day in 1944. The Captain's House was occupied by members of the Women's Royal Naval Service working at Portland Naval Base. After the war, from 1947 until 1999, the Master Gunner's House, now renamed the Captain's House, was the home of the commanding officer of the Royal Navy's base at Portland, called HMS Osprey. By 1952, the castle was registered as a historic monument, and the decaying 19th and 20th century interiors were stripped away, largely returning the structure to its original appearance. Today, the castle is a rare surviving example of a Tudor device fort. When you're ready, move into the next room opposite the doorway where you entered.
Come on then. Come on.
The fragments of stained and painted glass displayed here came from a heraldic window that may have decorated this room or another room in the castle. Beneath the crown, the words read, "Honi soit mal aimé." The old French translate to "evil to him who thinks evil." The phrase is the motto of the Order of the Garter, the highest order of chivalry in England, and awarded to only the greatest servants of the crown. Here, it hints at the person honoured by this window. Within the shield, you can see the arms of the Radcliffe Earls of Sussex and an Earl's crown above. The individual emblems within the quarters of the shield represent the 8 families of the Earl's lineage. The window could commemorate one of the 3 Earls of Sussex. The most likely is the 4th Earl, Henry Radcliffe, who was made Knight of the Garter in 1589 for services along the coast during the Spanish Armada crisis in 1588. He may have commissioned this window because of some jurisdiction for the Crown at Portland Castle. Experts aren't sure what this room was used for originally. Possibly, as in the early 18th century, it was a private dining room for the captain. However, it may have been a chamber for a deputy. When you're ready to move on, go through the door at the opposite end of the room from where you entered. You'll be going outside onto a narrow parapet. As you move across it, take care. The floor slopes down to the right and can be slippery in wet weather.
There's the privy.
It's in there then.
Yeah, the parapet.
No, they're in there.
This
Toilet.
Toilet, all
which
right.
is the remains of the upper gun floor, gives you a great view of Portland Harbour. Across the bay, about halfway along the left-hand side, you may be able to make out the ruins
can
of
get up there.
Sandsfoot Castle.
No.
As you heard earlier, Portland and Sandsfoot were strategically paired so that their gunfire would cross, attacking enemy ships from opposite sides. The walkway you're standing on wasn't originally part of the fort's design. As you heard earlier, the lower gun floor was originally covered over by a second floor with its own heavy guns. Up here, 4 big guns stood behind the embrasures, which are wider than the gun ports below, so that each gun could fire across a wider arc of the bay. Between the embrasures, the square-capped turret-like protrusions are vents, which would have rid the lower gun deck of poisonous gun smoke. This parapet walk was formed when the upper floor was mostly removed in the 18th century. If you move further along the parapet and look at the harbour, you'll see a curving stone wall forming a mighty breakwater. This late 19th century marvel stretches more than 3 miles, or nearly 5 kilometres. It created a harbour of refuge, capable of protecting the entire Royal Navy from the rough seas beyond. In the 1850s, new defences were also built on top of the breakwater, which, along with Vern's Citadel on the heights of Portland to your right, rendered Portland Castle obsolete. Now take a look at the 2 floating concrete blocks, one very close to the other. Known as the Phoenix Caissons, They were intended as part of the mobile harbour that was set up at Armoury on the Normandy
Over
coast
there,
for the
aren't they?
D-Day
Yeah.
landings in
We only see one of
1944.
them.
However, these two never made the trip across the channel. At the end of the parapet, go back inside and into the next room.
It's slightly older because it's built in the 1530s.
Sandsfoot is, yeah.
Doesn't look
Yeah.
as good condition.
No. It'll be over there somewhere. In
Yeah.
the mist. Lost in the mist.
Oh, shame, isn't it?
Yeah. And then there's North Fort. And Portland Harbour. And the Phoenix caissons. See if I can get a better picture of the caisson. That's about as much as I can see of the caisson. No chance seeing the other castle.
So they would have gone to Armoury where we went.
Yeah.
This room was probably the captain's sleeping quarters, much more comfortable than the soldiers' communal barracks downstairs. However, for long periods of time, the castle wasn't really fit for purpose, upstairs or down. In Henry VIII's day, after the initial fears of invasion by Catholic powers had passed, the fort was neglected. Later, with the threat of the Armada in 1588, it received more attention and manpower. But although there were skirmishes nearby, the castle didn't battle any Spanish ships. Good thing too, because its best guns had been moved onto Queen Elizabeth's ships. The fort only saw action once in its history, during the English Civil War. At the outbreak of the war in 1642, Royalists loyal to King Charles took control of the castle. Opposing parliamentary forces captured it in 1643, but only 3 days later, a fabulous trick brought the castle back into Royalist hands. 60 Royalists, dressed as parliamentarians, pretended to be pursued by another band of Royalists. When the parliamentarian guards opened the gates to save their comrades, they were overpowered and the fortress was recaptured for the king. The partitioned rooms you see were probably used as stores. But in 1646, after a 4-month siege, which also included an exchange of cannonballs, the Royalist garrison was forced to surrender. However, they were allowed to leave with the honours of war, marching out with their personal weapons, colours flying, drums pounding. Only a month after losing Portland, one of the last Royalist strongholds in the southwest, King Charles himself surrendered. He was executed 3 years later in 1649. By 1702, the castle was in poor condition, without even any gunpowder. It was repaired at some time in the 18th century, and improved again during the Napoleonic Wars of 1793 to 1815. That was the last time the castle was armed and garrisoned as a coastal gun fort, although in the 18th and 19th centuries it did play a role in preventing smuggling and privateering. Before you move on, you might want to play one of the games here that the soldiers would have enjoyed in Tudor times. When you're ready to go outside, just press the green button. This unusual round garden mirrors the castle itself. Like the castle, its circular walls are made from Portland stone, and their shape echoes the design of the castle's central keep. This unusual round garden mirrors the castle itself. Like the castle, its circular walls are made from Portland stone, and their shape echoes the design of the castle's central keep. The garden, with its distinctive minimalist style, was laid out by award-winning designer Christopher Bradley Hole. It's one of 6 contemporary heritage garden sites, which gave innovative makeovers to historic gardens in the care of English heritage. The plants are all hardy species that thrive in the salty seaside atmosphere. As the tall grasses blow in the wind, they mimic the movement and and sometimes even the sound of the sea. From as early as 1716, Portland Castle's garden was an important part of the complex, providing both fresh fruit and vegetables for the kitchen and a pleasant outdoor space for the captain. Known as the Governor's Garden, Governor is the later title for the captain, it was about half the size of today and was located inside a separate walled compound. In the 19th century, when the castle became the Manning residence, the garden was enlarged to include the present lawned area. You can still see the surviving defensible wall and ditch from Tudor times.
We hope you've enjoyed your visit to Portland Castle. It's a truly fascinating place, a fort that has withstood centuries of change and survived with many of its early interiors intact. A place where we can understand the lives of soldiers over more than 400 years.
Poppy's on to her next one there.
Next.
Well, that's it for Portland Castle. I hope you enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. Found it a little bit confusing finding our way around.
Well, I think there was a one-way system, but...
Yeah, got lost a couple of
few
times.
times, yeah, no.
But yeah,
it was
lovely,
good.
lovely little castle and well worth a visit. Come on a day when it's not foggy.
Yeah, that's a big recommendation, isn't it? Then you'd have terrific views. No, I like that castle because it was all on the flat, more or less.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of climbing towers. Especially trying to keep up with you-know-who.
She always wants to be moving up.
Turn right onto Sedan Road, then take the first right.
It's the Castle pub.
Turn right onto Old Castle Road.
That's handy.
Step right in front of me then.
Yep.
Park in the hedge. Well, if you can hear me above the hedge trimmer. It's very nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Go on then. Lily pond. Ah, this is something else. Apart from the fact it's completely...
Completely different to...
No, it's completely
really?
fenced off.
Yeah, danger, keep out.
Danger, keep out. So, 1539, Henry feared invasion after his dispute with Catholic Europe, and he built 20 castles along the south coast, funded by a dissolution of the monasteries. This, the neglected years, 1692 to 2008. 1954, last part of the gun deck fell onto the beach.
Oh, grief. No, it was just a tennis court there in the 1920s.
1920s, yeah. 1931 Tudor-style gardens, which is what we've got now.
Yeah.
And that's what it looked like in 1784.
Not a lot different from now, really.
No.
Poppy, come on.
Quite nice facing stones they had up there. Assume that was later. It's all been robbed though, hasn't it? All the lower stones have been robbed.
Yep. It's probably why the rest is sort of crumbling and falling away.
Yeah. Yeah, what it says here is Sandsfoot Castle is currently closed because it's structurally unsafe. Significant cracks have appeared in the seaward wall of the castle. No one should enter the site. Structural surveyor from Historic England there. So they're currently investigating the best method of carrying out a survey of the cliffs below the castle. The outcome of any survey would determine what work would be possible to stabilise this section. The position is that any work on the castle walls themselves will currently not stop the movement, as it's the cliffs below which are at the moment thought to be the issue. So they put 2 telltales in place to monitor what's happening. So presumably the cliff underneath is going.
Yeah. Well, didn't they say that the gun emplacement, which is there, had fallen into the sea?
Yeah, that was 1954, did they say?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, built in 1541.
Yeah.
Cost £3,887, 4 shillings and 1 pence, or £1.5 million in today's money. It's described as a right goodly and warlike castle in a strong position on the cliff overlooking Portland roads, facing Portland Castle across the harbour. It provided protection during the Spanish Armada crisis in 1588 and the Anglo-Dutch wars of the 17th century. When England fell into civil war in the 1640s, Sandsfoot became important again as a fortification for soldiers and as a mint where coinage was made and safely stored. Soldiers kept cold and lonely watch on the castle walls looking for enemy approaching and warmed themselves off duty by fireplaces that can still be seen. Sea and the weather the most effective enemies and wrecking damage on the castle. By the end of the 17th century it was becoming a ruin. Its proud gun floors had fallen into the sea.
Is that again? Yeah.
Oh yes, so that gone into the sea as the cliffs crumbled under wave and tide. Since then, much facing stone has been removed and used elsewhere, including the foundations of Weymouth's Town Bridge, which still stands. The final insult for this unique fort came by 1930 when it was declared unsafe and closed to the public. In 2012, with the help of the Heritage Lottery Fund, the castle was made safe once more and open to the public, only to be closed.
Because it's unsafe again.
Yeah, in 2021. Strategic location.
Come on. Oh, but no, you're not rubbing heads.
Portland
Come
Roads. Shaped
Like
was a
you're doing
safe
that.
haven for
on. Come on.
ships, protected for prevailing southwesterly by Chesil Bank, an ideal landing place for an invading enemy. Due to the limited range of Tudor guns, it was necessary to have 2 castles at Sandsfoot and Portland to protect the complete bay. The castles were initially armed with a type of gun known as a demi-culverin that could fire 10-pound missiles up to 2,000 yards. Its sister castles are not built to the same design. Sandsfoot is a square blockhouse with a faceted gun emplacement on the seaward side, while Portland's 2-storey circular tower has a curved front gun emplacement. And then it goes on to say about the cliff crumbling away again.
You can see the back of the stairs there. Awesome. That tower or whatever it was.
What? Where?
Here. If you look straight ahead, isn't that back of some stairs?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can see.
I'm trying to think where else he did this. Was it Pendennis and another castle down in Devon? No, that's Kent. I'm
Kent.
thinking of where either side there's one castle there. St Maur's, I think it is, and Pendennis Castle.
Pendennis and St Maur's, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well that's what they did, because I was saying the guns didn't have enough range
No, that's
to
right.
cover everything. There's a bit more here, what the quarters would have looked like. There's quarters for the soldiers. They had kitchens and eating halls. The basement was storing the munitions. The basement is used for munitions and stores with ventilation and light provided by chutes on the southwest side. Yeah. So that's all we can show you of Portland Castle, of Sandsfoot Castle. Yeah, Portland's a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But
But it's such a shame, isn't it, that castle's... I suppose
Yeah.
the trouble is all these houses will be going into the sea one day.
well, that's a bit worry for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're right on the edge. Anyway, on that thought,
And that thought.
I'm going to call it a
cheerful
day
thought.
and head back to the campsite, because tomorrow we're going to...
Old Sherborne Castle,
Right.
which is a fair way away.
Yeah, so we've got to get up early again tomorrow.
Yeah. Up early again tomorrow. Yeah.
All right. So if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. And if you haven't already, you know what to do.
Right.
And
And if you don't know what to do, what do?
you hit that subscribe button and hit the notifications icon.
Right. Okay then.
You knew that.
I know that, but you know, you can't assume that.